The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, content creators, or the production company.
Welcome to the Foundations of Freedom with Jerome Huyler. A strong, vigorous economy runs on a division of labor. While some produce the goods, others provide the services we, the people, need and want. But behind everything we do, our work, our businesses, our daily lives, are the political decisions our leaders make in our name. Since we elect the men and women who write the laws that create the conditions in which we all prosper or perish, we all need to be fully informed political participants. The silent majority can no longer afford to remain silent. One of the most valuable services a free people require is the clarification of complex social, economic, and political ideas. Other media platforms offer biting commentary on the hot-button headlines of the day. This podcast service will explore the underlying causes of and the effective cures for what ails us. And this nation is ailing. Ultimately, to preserve the American dream, we will have to retrieve the principles that made that dream possible. But there are more pressing issues and concrete decisions to consider. So please stay tuned.
In both life and business, knowing when enough is enough. Lao Tzu once said, "He who knows that enough is enough will always have enough." This ancient wisdom highlights the power of simplicity. In search engine optimization, overloading a page with keywords or plugins can ruin performance. Knowing when to stop is crucial. Simplicity ranks better, on Google and in life. Embrace moderation for success.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Foundations of Freedom with Jerome Huyler. I'm Vlad Gutenmaker, and last time we began explaining why leaders lie and how they become so good at it. We'll continue this discussion today. It's time to get down to the brass tacks. The vital question we did not address last time is, why do they do it? Why do they lie? What moves political leaders to dissemble as they do? What are they actually after?
And let me add, what can be the end result for all of us? At its simplest, we recognize that leaders will lie when the truth will hurt their reputations or their chances to win re-election. Politicians have to care what the voters and their colleagues think of them. They need to be respected and believed. So if it is found that a leader contradicts him or herself, or that a leader's deeds don't match his or her words, that is, the stated convictions, that leader will be tagged as a liar and or hypocrite. So as ironic as it may sound, our leaders will lie to save their reputation for honesty and moral virtue. There is fake news, we know, but there are also fake political leaders. And since there are ambitious opponents who won't hesitate to expose a competitor's failings, politicians have to defend themselves by hook or crook. They will use all their training and guile to keep from being exposed for who they really are. What's more, all of reality is connected, and one pulled string often attaches to other strings that can be just as easily pulled. And next thing you know, a leader's very character and reputation can completely unravel. Thus, are politicians drawn into a widening web of deceit and deception. This sparks, first, a festering feeling of being inauthentic, and second, the nagging sense that someone will see through the deception and expose the leader to public ridicule. It's a horrible way to live. Better to be honest, consistent, and always truthful. But there are other, more nefarious motivations that may drive a politician to dissemble and concede his or her deepest motivations. There are political agendas that will impact the way societies are governed and how a people will live. The question concerns the measure of power government can legitimately claim and how the power government gains affects the liberties of a free people. The liberties of free people can potentially lose.
Okay, I agree. In every place and period of human history, there have been individuals who've sought to subdue and manipulate and, let's say, control others. Why is that? How can we explain such behavior?
Psychology tells us that self-esteem is a pressing human need. No one can do without it. Self-esteem is the sum of an authentic self-confidence, the feeling that I am able, and self-worth. It's self-confidence together with self-worth, the feeling that I am good. I don't succeed by harming others. Lacking authentic self-esteem, people can fall back on a formula that says, if I can be liked or feared or can control others, it proves that I'm superior to them and so can fake the general article and feel what amounts to pseudo self-esteem. This, incidentally, is a theory that was developed by the late Dr. Nathaniel Branden. I heartily recommend his first book, The Psychology of Self-Esteem. Now, in order to subdue, manipulate, and control others, the more ambitious of these despots in waiting will seek political power. Is this a universal tendency? Ask the people of China, Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and so many other Middle Eastern monarchies. Despotic regimes are all around us. Human freedom and a due respect for individual rights, that's the exception to the universal rule.
Is there anything in American history, Jerry, that confirms this alleged universal tendency that pits liberty against power?
Yes, there is. We need look no further than to the founding of the country and the origins of America's War of Independence. I hope our viewers will excuse me for this digression, but it's profoundly important for understanding the struggle with which we are now engaged. We were all taught that the battle cry of the American Revolution was no taxation without representation. That was only a part of the story. As Edmund Burke said of the American patriots at the time, they augur misgovernment at a distance and snuff the approach of tyranny in every tainted breeze. That is key to understanding the mindset of the American revolutionaries. A palpable fear of power was the prism which the American founders viewed each successive tax act the British Parliament passed. If Parliament could lay taxes on the 13 colonies at will, it was widely feared they wouldn't stop until the colonial economy was utterly bankrupt. In order to preserve their liberties, the founders declared their independence and dared to begin the world anew. But why would Parliament do that? The patriots of the Revolution answered, they would because they could. Parliament, after all, passed the laws. What at the deepest level energized the American patriots in 1776, 249 years ago, can be described as the awful influence of power on human affairs. That was the phrase that was continually used. This theme was promoted throughout the early 18th century by a large number of influential writers and the colonists' correspondents, the people they corresponded to back in England. Nowhere was the need to fear power more widely disseminated than in the writings of two British radical Whigs. Their names were John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon. Between 1720 and 1723, they authored 144 weekly essays on liberty, civil, and religious. The essays were collected and published as Cato's Letters, named after the Roman patriot of the first century BC. It combined John Locke's political philosophy, these 144 essays did. They combined John Locke's political philosophy of natural individual rights with the whole history of political experience that demonstrated for the two authors the unrelenting threat political power poses to individual liberty. The essays were occasioned by the gross political corruption exposed following the collapse of the South Sea financial bubble in 1720. Trenchard and Gordon just wrote, and I quote, "Let us look around this great world and behold what an immense majority of the whole race of men crouch under the yoke of a few tyrants. Let us therefore grow wise by the misfortunes of others, and let their virtues and their vices and the punishment of them too be an example to us, and so prevent our miseries from being an example to other nations. In fine, let us examine and look narrowly into every part of our Constitution and see if any corruptions or abuses have crept or galloped into it," unquote. In a future episode, I will discuss the goodness that greatness begot. The point is that the vast majority of Americans are good people and a tad too innocent. They find it hard to believe that their leaders may be up to no good. Evil people who want to poke their fingers in our eyes. But in every generation, there are a few angry, disappointed, envious, self-hating men and women who just want to dominate others and work their arbitrary will over others. We would do well to identify them and take all necessary precautions against them.
So I guess the pivotal question for us living today is, do we have more to fear from Trump and the MAGA movement, or from the progressives and the woke left? Where do these opposing sides stand on the question of true liberty and the threat posed by the unquenchable thirst for power? Which side would rely on those time-tested tyrannical tendencies to have their own way?
Let's draw the battle lines. Just a couple of weeks ago, on June 14th, 2025, a good part of the country celebrated Flag Day, the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, and President Donald Trump's 79th birthday. On the same day, other Americans organized an event they called No King's Day. That was not a celebration, but a number of local protest rallies meant to form a bona fide resistance movement against Trump's alleged authoritarian ambitions. Trump, said the resistance, is acting more like a king than a president and needs to be kicked off his throne. Then there was the military parade on that day. What further proof did the progressives need to substantiate their criticism of Trump? Like nearly every other communist or fascist dictator, the protesters insisted, Trump was just showing off the nation's military might by having armored vehicles and uniformed troops proceed along Pennsylvania Avenue and past the egomaniacal president's reviewing stand. For Trump's detractors, it was no different than the May Day assemblages through Moscow or the occasional display of China's or North Korea's military might. Maybe the American army didn't goose step like Hitler's Nazis, but it was to the same end. That, at least, was what the progressive left accused Trump and his minions of intending on June 14, 2025. Fortunately, the race has experimented with tyranny in every imaginable earthly setting. By studying the lessons of history and of contemporary reality, we can reach informed conclusions with respect to the behavior of would-be tyrants and the impact encroaching despotic power has on national populations. In short, we know a good deal about how despotisms work. That is not good news for the progressive woke left, I'm afraid. Their conduct certainly bears scrutiny. Let's begin with this. Rahm Emanuel, Barack Obama's White House chief of staff, offered the country some advice. Quote, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that is an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before." Unquote. The COVID crisis offered the left-leaning Biden administration such an opportunity. In his last months of office, Donald Trump produced a vaccine that hopefully would resolve the COVID crisis. The Biden White House then exercised a nearly unprecedented measure of power in responding to the crisis. Government employees, including military personnel, were given a choice to either get vaccinated or lose their careers. All corporations that held government contracts or received public subsidies were likewise told to mandate vaccinations and take further precautions, or else. Those who were vaccinated, we were assured, would not contract COVID or pass the disease on to others. Both claims turned out to be fictitious. What's more, anyone caught promoting pharmaceuticals rather than inoculation to combat the virus was silenced. Their claims over the drug's efficacy were deemed to be so much misinformation. Yet, reputable doctors across the country were successfully using pharmaceuticals to combat the COVID outbreak. Official Washington was bent on commanding obedience to its health mandates. Churches, mosques, and synagogues were shut, while big box stores were allowed to do business as usual. Those businesses pay taxes. Houses of worship don't. Mask mandates were everywhere, even though most of the masks that were distributed could not prevent COVID infection. People online were ordered to stand at least 6 feet apart. The standard turned out to be completely arbitrary, without scientific foundation. In sum, the crisis enabled President Biden's health police to exert significant control over the country's population. That's not nothing. 51 intelligence officers authored a document assuring the nation that the computer said to be Hunter Biden's was merely Russian disinformation, when all it was is the gospel truth. That was a very big lie told to conceal a very embarrassing truth. As far as the politics of spending and financing are concerned, Donald Trump wants to shrink government. Dictators always seek to grow government. It is by capturing government power that leaders get to control other people's lives.
How do progressives explain and justify their predilection for providing more and more services to the country then? Why do progressive governments grow, as do the levels of spending that must accompany that growth?
Progressives believe governments must provide whatever is not being provided by the free market. Justice says people should get what they deserve, for good or bad. Social justice, that the progressives subscribe to, says, and the left demands, that people get whatever it is they need. What they need or want, socialism pronounces they deserve. Justice says people should get what they deserve. Socialism says that what they need or want, they deserve. That's why they call them entitlements. The growth of social services yields growth in public spending and so progressively higher taxes. Social entitlements aside, progressives now promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, known as DEI. This doctrine assures that jobs and public aid is not handed out on the basis of merit, not even first come, first served. Eligibility must be decided on the basis of cultural identity. If Blacks represent 50% of the population, then that many jobs in, say, the country's airport towers or pilot recruitment programs and every other industry or occupation should be distributed to 15% of Black Americans.
So how does this impact medicine? And what does this say about the administration, say, of Medicaid benefits?
Before Barack Obama's Medicaid reforms, states bore 50% of the cost of administrating their Medicaid programs. Obama loosened the eligibility requirements and raised the federal contribution from 50% to 90%. States could add to their Medicaid rolls liberally, since they would no longer bear the cost of administrating 50% of the program. Due to the Democrats' easy eligibility standards, for entitlement programs, a good part of the population no longer has a need to work. Government is happily providing food, shelter, medical care, clothing, and education to millions of working age, able bodied men and women in this country. In fact, why should a person go to work when government takes so high a percentage of their earnings? As I like to say, any family that is paying upwards of 50% in combined federal, state, local income taxes, property, payroll, sales, Social Security, utility, estate, and capital gains taxes is already half slave, half free. I have called the social welfare state a devilish plot to send millions of able-bodied Americans to an effort-free wonderland of stigmatized indigence. An effort-free wonderland of stigmatized indigence. While millions are being housed, clothed, and fed by a federal and state government, businesses around the country are shrinking their hours of operation because they can't find workers who are willing to work. The deeper point is that, as Gerald Ford observed back in 1976, a government that is big enough to give you anything you want is big enough to take everything you have. That's what government growth gradually and mercilessly does. You can see episode number 4 for the details of all that. The progressive left promotes tax increases. Liberals are not disturbed by today's reckless levels of federal spending, the staggering annual budget deficits, or our 36 trillion accumulated national debt. What that means for future generations is of no concern to the liberal left progressives. MAGA, on the other hand, favors tax cuts so that individuals can keep more of what they earn. Our founders called it the just fruits of honest industry. Trump's proposals, if enacted, would extend his 2017 tax cuts. That reform doubled the standard deduction for individuals and small businesses and reduced corporate income taxes from 35% to 21%. If not extended by Congress this year, the 2017 tax reductions will end and the tax increases will be palpable. This year, Trump proposed reducing the corporate income tax to 15%. As of today, July 2nd, it does not look like Congress will enact that tax cut. But his no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security benefits, and auto interest deductions prove that he is not just looking out for millionaires and billionaires, as the Democrats falsely and continually charge. Just more lies from the left. No dictator in his right mind would prefer to cut instead of raise taxes on the people. Donald Trump is as concerned with government's reckless spending levels as he is with the tax burden that spending places on individual families. To shrink government and cut billions in waste, fraud, and abuse from the budget, Trump instituted a Department of Government Efficiency, affectionately known as DOGE. So far, it claims to have found $180 billion in budget cuts. Unfortunately, that's a pittance when placed against the anticipated $2 trillion budget deficit we will be chalking up this year and next and the year after that. Just as an aside, in episode number 3, I explained why going after the waste, fraud, and abuse in so many specific public programs will accomplish little lasting good. In episodes 5 and 6, I laid out a program for achieving real and lasting budgetary savings.
What is the desire, Jerry, to either lower or raise taxes and public spending actually imply? What do the two opposed positions say about their respective estimates of our human nature? What does this say about the ability of men and women to survive and succeed?
MAGA people believe men and women are more than capable of pursuing their own interests. They can take care of themselves. This speaks to their confidence in the dignity and power of individual effort. Americans should just live and let live. MAGAs, Donald Trump's fans, maintain that by lowering taxes and eliminating today's burdensome regulatory mandates, especially for DEI, CRT, and ESG, environment of social governance, individuals will enjoy ample opportunity to improve the conditions of their lives and grow prosperous. Americans will also have greater incentives to open new and expand existing businesses, which will create millions of more jobs and opportunities in the bargain. When progressives look out at America, they don't see millions of individuals and families striving to better the conditions of their lives and being stymied daily by the very big government agenda they, the progressives, loudly champion. The left sees only victims. To end victimization, it is the American way of life, that is, capitalism, free enterprise, and the principle of private property that must be repealed and replaced. That, say the progressives, is how to end the exploitation that manifests itself in gross income inequality. Strictly speaking, they may not be Marxists, but they have carried Karl's ideological torch right into the 21st century. For more details, see Zoran Mamgani's platform as he is running for mayor and has the Democratic Party line already for the November 4th election. Now, what is a right to property? A property right. It is the right every individual has to gain, keep, use, trade, or otherwise dispose of his freely acquired possessions. Progressives believe that the nation's wealth belongs not to the individual who earns it, but to society at large. That is why Congress can take away and give away as much as it pleases. That is not what Thomas Jefferson or Adam Smith meant when they spoke about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or economic liberty and free markets. On another front now, the MAGA movement has no problem with free thought and expression. They are fine with the First Amendment of the Constitution's Bill of Rights. Morally, they believe every individual should stand on his or her own feet, look at the world through his or her own eyes, and decide for him or herself what is right and what is wrong. Anyway, everyone is entitled to his or her opinion. No right-winger disputes that. This is what we call psychological independence, standing on one's own feet, looking at the world through one's own eyes, and deciding right from wrong, good from bad. It holds that thinking for oneself is every bit as important as materially supporting oneself. Dictators, on the other hand, always seek to control what other people think. Indoctrination and the use of propaganda are the tyrant's time-honored tools. Criticism of the ruling regime almost always invites imprisonment, if not execution. Today's political left preaches and practices what we call political correctness. The left also holds out the threat to business posed by disenchanted consumers. This we call cancel culture. Individuals and businesses are encouraged to toe the Democratic Party line or face the consequences, namely social ostracism or economic failure. If it's a business that fails to comply, it can expect an organized boycott and shrinking profits. No business wants to suffer a loss of traffic. And for today's youth, social abandonment, being left out or left behind, is too terrible a fate to contemplate. Say something nice about MAGA or Trump and watch what happens to your social life. This can appropriately be called soft censorship. It is still a species of mind control. 51 intelligence officers authored a document assuring the nation that the computer said to be Hunter Biden's was just another piece of Russian disinformation. As the left studiously discounted the claim that the COVID virus came from a biochemical lab in Wuhan, China, these 51 intelligence officials affixed their signatures to a document assuring the nation that the computer said to be Hunter Biden's was not Hunter Biden's. When the authorities, those 51 officers, well knew it was. The widely repeated lie, especially told by Joe Biden in the final debate before the 2020 election, was essential to his avoiding the crisis and winning election.
Wow, that is a whole new level of deception and tyranny and control. The fact that they got away with that should concern everybody, in my opinion. I don't understand how they can get away with it, but they did. So the woke progressives, they take a good part of our earnings, have little regard for the truth, and that is a threat to our free speech and our free expression. The left tell us not how to think, but what to think, right? That's a problem. But aren't there national calamities we need to guard against? Take climate change, for example. Doesn't it pose an existential danger, not only to us, but to future generations?
Many current commentators of the conservative persuasion have observed that the progressive left doesn't care about immigrants, women, victims of capitalism, or the environment. They just seek power. Let's unpack the Green New Deal agenda and see what it signifies for the future of liberty in America. In part 1 of Why Leaders Lie, episode number 7, I exposed the substantial number of climate calamities that leading spokesman warned us about, but that never came to pass. There is no reason to believe that we face impending peril from the coal, oil, and natural gas that fuels industrialization, offers a multitude of work opportunities, and provides the wonderful comforts and conveniences we enjoy daily, but all too commonly take for granted. Let me say once again, despite the filthy coal-fired power plants China is opening month after month, our climate crusaders never think to hold a protest rally in front of the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., or anywhere else in the world. Why not? It's not the climate that the climate activists care about. It is an attack on industry, capitalism, and private productive effort to improve the conditions of daily life in America. That is what they're out to accomplish. The climate warriors continue to warn us of the climate crisis to come. They propose a long list of mandates that would restrict freedom of action. Look at the power they would give government. Short of an all-out ban on the production and use of coal, oil, and natural gas, they have restricted drilling for known reserves of oil and natural gas in the Gulf and in Alaska's ANWR, that 19 million acre Arctic National Wildlife Reserve. They have blocked the construction of oil and gas pipelines and have lengthened the permitting process, the time needed to allow for new energy exploration. Biden's officials hope to stop families from purchasing gas-powered motor vehicles. California already initiated such directives. Only electric cars would be permitted on the highways and byways of the United States. As it turns out, cows emit mountains of carbon daily. There was a failed attempt to rid the American diet of steak and countless other bovine products. An outright ban on gas ranges, air conditioners, other common appliances was also contemplated. In many locales, office towers and new apartment buildings are required to use electric stoves, electric devices. These are mandates Americans cannot avoid. In addition, ESG, environmental social governance, ESG reporting regulations have been developed, though not federally imposed, not yet. Under the rule, companies must comply with reporting requirements indicating what actions they are taking to advance a sustainable climate and remedy past anti-sustainability practices. Needless to say, any business that expects a government subsidy or public contract will necessarily have to comply with such bureaucratic directives. All of this constitutes an all-out assault on our liberties and an exercise of government power never before contemplated. Not surprisingly, Donald Trump dubbed many of the federal ESG and DEI mandates by affixing his signatures to a number of executive orders. Families will continue to purchase the car they choose to drive.
So can I conclude, Jerry, that you're saying MAGA good, woke culture bad? Is that the gist of it?
Yes, it is. The progressives willfully lie about President Trump and about the country he leads. It's a pack of lies that have to be enforced by the politically correct thought police. Anyone who is caught defending Trump and his MAGA programs will be charged with disseminating disinformation and shall be left socially adrift. And what are the progressives' basic complaints with American culture? It is alleged that America is filled with racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, conservative hate speech, Republican voter suppression, toxic masculinity, and rampant police brutality. White people, especially religious white people with children, need to be investigated as possible domestic terrorists. That was the program initiated by Joe Biden's FBI and Justice Department. In fact, high officials in Biden's Justice Department went so far as to claim that white parents are domestic terrorists who pose a greater threat to America than do any other organized group, including Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Please understand, I am not giving a blank check or blanket endorsement to anything and everything President Trump has done or might do. I believe he has the country's best interests at heart and can be trusted with the power the people have bestowed on him.
So, what's the ultimate solution then? How can we, the people, best protect our liberties and prevent our government from giving away and taking away everything we have?
In the short run, I would urge our viewers and listeners to share this podcast with their friends, neighbors, relatives, and coworkers, and elect more Republicans. As I indicated in episode number 3, they are not the panacea, but at least they are not Democrat and woke progressives. In the long run, if we want to preserve the American dream, we will have to retrieve the principles that made that dream possible. They are America's founding principles. A discussion of those principles will have to wait, I'm afraid, for a future episode. Please stay tuned.
For our listeners, if you made it this far, congratulations. You now officially know more about political deception than most people in Congress. Seriously, though, if this episode gave you something to think about, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, post it on your social media, post it anywhere you can, text it to your friends, text it to that one friend who still thinks the government has your best interest at heart. And if you're fired up, take action. Find your representatives, write to them. We even made it easy for you. Just hit the link tree. It's in the resources. You'll see. Download the letter. All you have to do is put your name on it, put the date, and you can send it right now. We made it super easy for you to find them. There's 3 sites you can look at to find your local representatives wherever you live in this great country. And if you want to go deeper, grab Dr. Huyler's books on Amazon, subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, and follow him on LinkedIn and Quora for more real live updates. For following him. And then he's dropping truth bombs weekly. So, you better go subscribe now, connect now. This isn't just about Trump or Biden, by the way. It's about whether or not we stay free or whether we get steamrolled by people who really want to tell you what to think, what, when, and how to drive, what you should eat, what you can say, and just totally control and dominate your life. That's not the American way. So stay strong, stay sharp. Don't let the thought police get you down. And until next time, thanks for listening and stay free. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Rod.